What happened to the music?
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike. This is Budget Goods and Gear Reviews, and you are listening to The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards and fire up your fingers. Time to join the conversation.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you here. It is Friday, October 5th, 2018. And as always, I am pleased, surprised, and humbled that some of you have decided to come and spend time listening to me blather on about whatever has made me mad today. So let me go ahead and say welcome to everybody out there in the chat so far. Early adopters today were Vanessa Kitty, the Tactical Pickle, and Mateo 674. They were here a half hour ago. So thanks to you guys for sticking around and waiting for this. Let's see who else we got out there. We got, well, I've been talking with Mateo and the Pickle here for a bit. Right now, we also have Lisa here, Guitar Man Pete. Good to see you guys. Thanks for stopping by. On the panel, we have roll call live at the foosball game, even though Mama does not approve. How you doing, Ro? If you can hear me.
Yeah, I heard you, man. It's loud as hell in this hole. Got some football going on tonight. It's LaPorte against Michigan City. This is the biggest rivalry of the year, so I'm gonna come watch this crap.
Uh-oh. Squib, how you doing, man? It's 7 o'clock on Friday. Don't forget to lock the doors, take out the trash.
Yeah, I already did that. I'm sort of doing things out of order tonight.
Oh!
My management, in their infinite wisdom, has decided to give me a list of impossible tasks. I think they're testing me.
Well, isn't that what management's supposed to do?
No, they're supposed to manage, dude.
Oh, okay. Somebody forgot to tell them. All right, we have a lot to talk about today. You know, I've kind of been shying away today from the Kavanaugh stuff. I mean, they're going to go ahead. They went ahead and voted to advance it to a full floor vote tomorrow. So between now and then, we have deliberation. From everything I could gather, it is boiling down to the Democrats say Kavanaugh bad, and the Republicans say Kavanaugh good, and that's pretty much how it's going to be, unless and until somebody drags some other accusation out of the woodwork, which I wouldn't put past them to try and derail this thing. Remember, we do have a Republican Senator, Daley, who says that he will not be there tomorrow to vote because he's going to his daughter's wedding, come hell or high water. So they may postpone the vote until Sunday or Monday. Or I know that they've offered him a plane to get him back to the Senate to vote. So we'll see how that goes. So I'm not holding my breath until, you know, any of this, until this whole thing's over and done with. Which, if I'm going to bet, I would say that the man will be, I think that the man will be confirmed. Lisa says, and he's found innocent, she needs to be charged. Yeah, I think that these people should suffer some sort of repercussions for bringing false accusations. But, you know, hell, that happens day in, day out to men all across the country, and nothing's done. So I suspect this will be no different. Not to say that every allegation against someone is false. We all know that that isn't the case. There are plenty of allegations that are absolutely true. I'm just saying that there are a lot of false ones levied and nothing ever gets done. I don't know how many times I've been accused of wrongdoing where I work, and you know, every time it's found to be not true, because of course I'm absolutely perfect, and there's never any consequences for it. So, you know, it's the same thing, just on a larger scale across the country. I will say though that to her credit, and we were talking a little bit here in the chat before we got started about the proceedings and whatnot, and that you know, we were also talking about how we think things are going to go if and when Ginsburg decides to step down. You know, when she's trying to hold out for, how long she's trying to hold out for. Eric Granick does bring up a good point. Says he can't be found innocent. It's not a legal trial. Yes, that's true, but so far the FBI investigation that the Democrats just had to have showed that these accusations are not corroborated at all, and there's, you know, nothing new. So I guess that's close enough to being found innocent anyway. But at any rate, we're talking about Ginsburg and, you know, how she's trying to hang on at least until the 2020 elections to try to give the Democrats an opportunity to appoint another Supreme Court justice, so that it does not become a 6-3 majority towards the conservative side. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But to Ginsburg's credit, she is not exactly happy with the way this process has gone. I'm going to play a little bit of audio here that of her talking about that.
Last week, we saw the Senate hold confirmation hearings for a nominee to your court.
By the way, if you check farther up in the chat, there is a link to this video if you really want to watch it.
Observers have said that the process today looks nothing like your confirmation hearing 25 years ago. President Clinton nominated you in June of 1993, and you were confirmed by the Senate 2 months later by a vote of 96-3. I might add that the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association was pleased to support your nomination. How would you compare the process that you went through with what's going on today in that process?
The way it was right. The way it is wrong. The atmosphere in 93 was truly bipartisan. The vote on my confirmation was 96-3. Even though I had spent about 10 years of my life litigating cases under the auspices of the ACLU board, ACLU, and I was on the ACLU board and one of their general counsel. My White House handlers asked me questions about my ACLU affiliation. They were very nervous about it. And I said, forget it, just forget it. There's nothing you can do that will lead me to badmouth the ACLU. And not a single question. No senator asked me any question about that. It was the same for Justice Breyer, who was nominated a year later. He had in the 90s the numbers. Or think of Justice Scalia, who is certainly a known character in what was it, 1986. I mean, he had been a law professor and written many things. He had been on the DC circuit. The vote was unanimous. Every Democrat and every Republican voted for him. But that's the way it should be. Instead of what it's become, a highly partisan show. The Republicans move in lockstep, so do the Democrats. I wish I could wave a magic wand and have it go back to the way it was.
So even Ruth Bader Ginsburg recognizes the despicableness of what's going on now. Calaveras says, Tactical Pickle says she sounds to be struggling to speak. Well, yeah, she's it's probably difficult for her to speak. She's pretty well up there. Yeah. Roosted says, my God, anyone else think term limits when you hear her? Yeah. Squib and I were talking pre-chat that, the case could probably be made for Supreme Court justices to have to undergo a yearly physical and mental evaluation to maintain their seats, so that, of course, we could also expand that to other positions in government, just to ensure that they're competent to perform their duties. She sounds cogent. She sounds coherent. She's just having a little bit of difficulty because she's she's up there in age. So we'll see how long she can hold out. Had a couple late additions to the panel. Kingpin himself, David Bowling's here. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How you guys doing tonight?
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Ryan from ZRUS Outdoors. How you doing, sir?
Hey, man. What's going on? Sorry, I'm battling a little bit of a cold.
Oh, that's all right. Tactical Pickle says that the problem with physical and mental tests is depending on who creates, they can tailor it to be good or bad. Yeah, and that is the argument against it. Is who decides what is what's competent, who decides what is what the standards are, So I absolutely agree with that. That is the concern to that. But all right, let's go ahead and get moving on to the main stuff that I had actually planned to talk about. I figured that I could not ignore the whole Kavanaugh situation today. It's kind of dominating the news at the moment. But like I said, basically, so far right now, all that's going on is Democrats say Kavanaugh bad, Republicans say Kavanaugh good, and we'll vote tomorrow to see if they confirm him. Maybe. So I guess maybe we'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow once it happens one way or another. Maybe I'll come on with a single shot or something and we can hash that out. All right. General relativity. What said you wish Trump had kept his mouth shut? Well, there's a lot a lot of things that he said that I wish he'd keep his mouth shut on. To what precisely are you referring? The whole bump stock issue? I guess we can talk about that before we get into the stuff that I was going to talk about. He recently said that, we're just weeks away from finalizing the process to get rid of bump stocks. We're going to knock them out or something like to that effect. Yeah, he said that before too. And so far it's been a year. Nothing has been done. Hopefully nothing will continue to be done. And he's just running his mouth. We'll see though. He is the type of individual that, when he says he wants to do something, he wants to do it. He says he was referring to Ford, but bump stocks as well. So, yeah, what do you guys think? Where do you think on the panel here? Do you think that the bump stock thing is going to go anywhere? Or do you think it's still sound and fury signifying nothing?
I think that it's more the NRA than it is Trump. I don't think Trump outguns or cares much about guns either way. I believe that he's the law and order president, so he's going to support the Second Amendment, like he says. We'll have to take his word for it. But as far as the bump stock thing goes, I think that the people at the NRA are like, look, if we give them this, they'll back off. And Trump's just like, okay, just let me know what you guys think.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to say about it. I think if he's gonna play a political, toy in that, is basically that's a real.
I don't think Donald Trump could tell you what a bump stock was.
Oh no, probably not.
I think that you're right about the whole NRA thing, saying if we give it to them, they'll leave us alone. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it makes it worse. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. But I will say this. The politicians are not the only ones who don't understand. If you guys were listening to Matt's show on Wednesday, where the first hour they talked about this, pretty much everybody on the panel all said a bunch of stuff that is not true, is not correct, and doesn't help our side when we want to present an argument with logic and facts and stuff. And I really, if I was the president and I had Matt and G and Yankee get a hold of me and go, hey, Squibb, you're president. You're a gun channels guy. Make this bump stock thing go away. And I said, look, I got to have something to take to the American public. I got to have something to take to Congress. I got to have something here. And he said, we're going to do a show on Wednesday. In the first hour, we're going to talk about this. And you can take everything we say and use that as your case to make all this go away. And all right, fine, cool. They made a case to get rid of bump stocks. They might have not thought they did, but they made a case to get rid of them only because nothing they said was facts. It was all emotion, and it was a lot of, I shouldn't say all emotion, but it was a lot of emotion, and it was a lot of using the same. I don't think they realized that's what they were doing. I don't think that if these things were used in one crime ever, that's a reason to get rid of them, restrict them, blah, 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 whatever. And I don't think that even though these things are kind of stupid toys and a lot of people don't like them, don't have them, will never have them, don't want them, it's a reason to get rid of them. I don't think that in this case, at first I thought just throw them a bone and they'll leave us alone. But their reaction after we did that, or after the NRA did that, or the 2A community, or whatever you want to call it, the conservatives did that, was to immediately demand more. So at that point, for me, all bets were off. That strategy wasn't going to work. Let's not do that. But we need to come at this with something a little bit more factual, a little bit more about emotion. And I think if we stand on the whole, look, it was only used one time in one crime, that's not justification. And then we branch out from there with facts. I think we're going to have a better chance than if we, start coming up with things that aren't even military tactics and spouting that and sounding like the damn media.
Well, I can't comment because I did not watch the show and really You know, it's I have no idea
to be blunt, to cut past the arguments of three people that I understand that they were trying to do the right thing and the arguments had some merit and stuff like that. The worst thing that I heard was that the number of people killed wasn't that bad. And I'm paraphrasing. I mean, I'm really tearing this up. I'm not saying it exactly. But it was the simple fact that the high number of people that were wounded by a bullet didn't seem to matter. Getting shot, period. Whether it's a flesh wound, whether you're paralyzed for life or you end up dead, is a bad thing. So when you try to minimize the crime by saying, well, I forget how many people it was. It was in the hundreds were actually wounded, but only 58 died. That's not that bad. You instantly lose favor with the people that are trying to take away your rights. Getting shot at all. I mean, you could get shot and then for the rest of your life be in physical therapy, be in pain, not have the use of a limb, not have the use of your senses, have emotional distress, all kinds of stuff. So you have to be sympathetic to anybody who is shot, who is traumatized, who is shot at, or who dies. You can't just say, well, we just need to look at, don't worry about the people who got shot because they're still alive. That's like, dude, really? What if that was your kid and they couldn't ever walk again? So I think that if we are going to make our case, we've got to kind of approach it with less emotion, because the other side is using emotion, and we know that doesn't work. Well, it works, but it's not right. It's not right to go strictly off of emotion. I think also people are tired. They're frustrated. They've had enough of it. They just want it to go away.
Yeah, that's very true. I think a lot of people are really exhausted with it. Who was it out there that said something that Einstein, FCC is banning the sale of Baofeng radios without a license on the 23rd of this month. Better get one before prices spike. Is there a particular one you would recommend? Because I see a lot of different models here on Amazon. For those that don't know, Baofengs are a inexpensive ham radio that is voice that real easy to talk on and real easy to use, and a lot of ham operators don't like it because they they're inexpensive and they make it real easy to use. Unfortunately, a lot of people also use them without having the proper license, because you do have to have a ham radio license in order to broadcast on the ham frequencies on it. So it's kind of a prepper thing that people like to have them, and just in case. So if there's a particular model you can recommend, Einstein, that would be good to know, because I might just have to pick one up. Thanks for letting me know, because I didn't know about that. Midnight Range says he's a ham operator. He makes a mean sandwich. Yeah, okay. All right, now on to the stuff that I was actually going to talk about, that I was actually planning to talk about anyway. We all know that celebrities tend to be hypocritical when it comes to the gun issue, from Alyssa Milano to the various politicians. We got Bloomberg running around with his security detail, and he's doing everything he can to make sure that you don't have firearms. Well, hoopster Lebron James has been the latest celebrity to jump on the hypocrite bandwagon. This is a piece from October 4th by AWR Hawkins in Breitbart. Gun control proponent LeBron James has armed guards on security detail. NBA star and gun control proponent LeBron James is critical of private citizens carrying guns for self-defense, but employs at least 10 armed security personnel at his home for defense of himself and his family. Following the October 1st, 2015 attack on gun-free Umpqua Community College, Associate Press reporter Tom Withers quoted LeBron saying, "There's no room for guns." He told the AP that there needs to be greater penalties for carrying a gun, legal or illegal, quote unquote, to make people think twice about doing it. After the February 14, 2018 attack on gun-free Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, The Bleacher Report indicated LeBron criticized laws allowing 19-year-old quote-unquote minors to buy a gun and called for passage of more gun control. But LeBron is fine with being surrounded by guns for defense of himself and his family. TMZ reports that news of burglaries of more than 24 homes of the rich and famous in Los Angeles has led LeBron to fortify his dwelling. This fortification includes at least 10 armed security personnel at the home, including off-duty police officers. Celebrity gun control advocate Kim Kardashian modeled this same kind of hypocrisy after being robbed in Paris in 2016. TMZ reported Kardashian met with some ex-Special Forces members from the Israeli army, ex-CIA agents, as well as former Secret Service members after the robbery occurred, and hired an unspecified number of former Secret Service agents as part of the effort to amp up her security to presidential levels. All the while, Kardashian's public comments on guns were those favoring stricter gun laws for rank-and-file Americans. So it continues, folks. It is good for me, but not for thee. Thoughts?
So you see these guys right down here in front of me? See these guys right here? So these two dudes who are going into the military, we got to tell them when they're on home leave or anything that they're not allowed to have guns. Is that what LeBron James thinks? LeBron James needs to stick to one thing, that's playing basketball, being somewhat of a criminal at times, and buying houses. He needs to stop telling me what I'm doing in my life. He doesn't need to know what I'm doing in my life. I don't watch basketball. I don't care about basketball, so he shouldn't care what I do in my city, my town, or what I do in my house.
I can't say it any better.
Yeah, the rich and privileged kind of. The problem is, though, people keep buying their jerseys and supporting their teams and going to their movies and going to their concerts and stuff like that.
Well, that's the funny thing, that if you look at like the Hollywood stars that all come out, nobody should have guns. They made their living. I'm going to say Bruce Willis. I don't know. I'm just using him as the example. I don't know if he's pro-gun, anti-gun. I don't know anything about him.
He's pro-gun.
Okay, but then we'll use, since he is pro-gun, we'll say he was anti-gun, just for my argument's sake. Then he came out and made all these millions and millions of dollars off of being, you know.
You mean like Stallone?
Okay, I don't know. If Stallone's anti-gun, yeah. Rambo, all the money he made off Rambo, the movie Cobra, you know, every Rocky, you know, punching somebody in the face, and you know, the violence. They make all their money off of violence. If there was no violence, I don't know. The hypocrisy, it's just got me fed up right now.
Yeah. And that's it. These guys, they I don't know. Maybe you have to be rich and famous to understand it, because you know, their reality is different from the rest of us. I mean, they don't have to worry about struggling to pay the bills. They don't have to worry about, you know, living paycheck to paycheck, unless they're complete idiots and absolutely mismanage their money, which I guess could be.
Nancy Pelosi, I'm sorry, I apologize for interrupting, but
no, go ahead.
When Nancy Pelosi said crumbs, you know, when the tax returns came out, or the tax breaks came out, the new tax laws Trump passed, and she called them the crumbs, she meant that. That wasn't scripted. That wasn't part of the plan. That's how she looks at it. They were crumbs, because she believed that 100%. So you're absolutely right. They don't think like us. They don't live like us. They don't understand us at all. And that's what really gets under my skin, is people keep putting their faith in these governments. Like people right now who want socialism. Look at the rotten, horrible government we have right now, and you just want to give them more control? That's what you want to do?
Well, and look at the track record of socialism / communism in the 20th century. Over 100 million people killed. Their own people.
Right, but the argument that they'll give you is, I mean, you've heard it a million times. It hasn't been done right yet.
And it never will.
But they want to see Bernie Sanders do it. Look at the government that we have now, thanks to Bernie Sanders and Chuck Schumer and Paul Ryan and all of them, the left, the right, all of them. And I don't mean to not be hyperbolic. That's kind of what I'm going for right now. I mean, when I say all of them, I mean each and every one. All of them. They're
come on, David. You don't want your 40 acres and a mule?
I don't want the government to do anything for me except keep bad guys off our shores. That's it. You keep the bad guys off our shores, and we'll take care of the rest of it.
Well, and let's not forget, schools and roads and
schools,
water system and sewer system and stuff like that.
Ever since the government's taken over the schools, the American education is taken a nosedive, because at the statistics for schooling and for the Department of It, and then after, the government has ruined education in this country.
I think the problem with the education would be the federal government. If we leave it at the local level, I think it's fine. But because that way the local people can make the choices for what sort of education they want their kids to have on their own.
Yeah, and I'm no anarchist by any means. I'm not trying to say throw all government out, and to say that I can't understand why people trust the government we have right now for anything. They've proven. I'm 41 years old, and for 41 years they've done nothing but show me that they can't be trusted ever.
I can tell you why they trust the government so much and they rely on the government so much. George Carlin said it. Think of the dumbest person you know. The absolute dumbest person you know. Half the people out there are dumber than that. It's sad but true. And because they're dumb, they're also lazy. If the government can think for me, the government can do for me. If the government. Oh, don't worry, the government. Oh, the government told me this is okay. The government. But does that mean I'm an anarchist? No. Just like David, I'm not an anarchist either. But it's kind of disappointing because we are the greatest country on this earth. If you don't believe it, go over to Somalia and come back and tell me we're not the greatest country on the earth. But we're the greatest country on the earth, and someday it would be great if we could just live up to that. That's why the Trump whole "Make America Great Again" thing was a promise I was hoping I could get behind. It's just he's delivering on it real slow though, so you really might want to pick up the pace a little.
All right. Well, in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and move on from this. They're already kind of hitting the next topic out in the chat. They're talking about Australian gun control. The LA Times had published an article by Karen Kaplan. This was on September 26th. They published this. The title is "Why Australia's Famed Gun Control Laws Probably Wouldn't Reduce Shooting Deaths in America." On a spring day in the Tasmanian town of Port Arthur, a lone gunman shot an elderly couple at the inn they owned, 22 diners lunching at a nearby tourist spot, 2 tour bus drivers, and several of their passengers, 4 occupants of a BMW, and 2 customers at a gas station. By the time the bullet stopped flying on April 28, 1996, 35 people were dead and another 23 were wounded. It was the worst mass shooting Australia had ever seen. In a matter of months, Australia rolled out the National Firearms Agreement, which banned the possession of automatic and semi-automatic firearms in all but quote-unquote exceptional circumstances. About 640,000 guns were surrendered through a gun buyback program, and another 60,000 were turned in to authorities for free in 1996 and 1997. Australia has not seen a shooting like the Port Arthur massacre since, and the National Firearms Agreement is widely credited for this success. Gun control advocates in the United States, including former President Obama, have spoken admiringly of the law and suggest it should be a model for reducing gun deaths here. That wouldn't do any good, according to the authors of a new study. Mass shootings get the most attention, but they account for a tiny fraction of total gun deaths in the U.S., data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention show. Among the nation's 36,252 firearms-related fatalities in 2015, 61% were suicides, and most of the rest were ordinary homicides. Neither of those kinds of deaths actually fell in Australia as a result of the National Firearms Agreement, researchers reported Tuesday in the American Journal of Public Health. Many claims have been made about the NFA's, not our NFA, their NFA, the NFA's far-reaching effects and its potential benefits if implemented in the United States, wrote Stuart Gilmore, a statistician at St. Luke's International University in Tokyo, and his co-authors from the University of Tokyo. However, more detailed analysis of the law shows that it likely had a negligible effect on firearm suicides and homicides in Australia and may not have as large an effect in the United States as some gun control advocates expect. Previous studies have said otherwise. A 2010 report of the American Law and Economics Review concluded that the buyback led to a drop in the firearm suicide rates of almost 80% and had a similar effect on gun-related homicides. But the study ignored the fact that gun deaths were already falling when the program went into effect. A 2016 study in the Journal of the American Medical Association acknowledged that a decline in gun-related suicides and homicides was indeed underway, but said these mortality rates dropped more sharply in the aftermath of the NFA. However, the JAMA study, the JAMA study, failed to consider deaths that had nothing to do with guns. That means that they might have given the gun control law credit for something that would have happened anyway. Gilmore and his co-authors attempted to solve these problems by using a statistical method known as difference in difference. This approach turns real-life events into scientific experiments in which one group is subjected to an intervention and another group serves as a control. In this case, the intervention was the National Firearms Agreement. It could have affected Australians who were inclined to use a gun to commit a suicide or homicide. But Gilmore's team assumed it would have no effect on suicides and homicides that did not involve a gun. This was their control group. Their difference in difference analysis revealed that although the rate of gun-related suicides fell steadily after the NFA went into effect in 1997, that decline was part of a larger trend that began in the late 80s, and it wasn't altered by the new law. Likewise, homicides in Australia were already dropping when the National Firearms Agreement went into effect. The rate of gun-related homicides fell in the wake of the NFA, but the law had no effect over and above a broad decline in homicides involving all kinds of weapons, the study authors wrote. To test the strength of their results, the researchers repeated their analysis using 1998 as their first year of the NFA era. They also tried using earlier start dates for the pre-NFA period in case their initial choice happened to skew the results. The findings were mostly unaffected by these changes. It's not that the National Firearms Agreement was a bad idea. It's that the other things going on in Australia must have made a bigger difference, one that swamped any help the NFA might have offered. The researchers can't say for sure what those other things were, but they have some ideas. They noted that Australia implemented a nationwide youth suicide prevention program in 1995 and one for adults in 2001. Either or both programs could have helped reduce suicides, including suicides carried out with a gun. In addition, the Australian Institute of Criminology developed gun control policies that were adopted in 1991, 5 years before the NFA. It is likely that these more comprehensive and detailed 1991 changes played a greater role in reducing firearms-related suicide and homicide than did the NFA, which was implemented solely for the purpose of eliminating mass shootings, Gilmore and his colleagues wrote. If that is indeed the case, trying to pass an American version of the National Firearms Agreement could be counterproductive, they added. It is imperative that this political moment not be squandered on a law that will have limited impact, they wrote. To achieve real, sustained reductions in the majority of causes of firearm-related mortality, the United States needs a broader, more comprehensive range of gun control measures than those in the NFA. So, this says that the Australian-style gun control, as far as their National Firearms Agreement, the outlawing of semi-automatic weapons and the subsequent forced buyback and turn-in really didn't have any effect on the overall homicide rates and suicide rates in Australia. You know? So they surmised that it wouldn't here. Unfortunately, their final conclusion that, well, Instead of that, we just need more. It is a little bit off, I think, but you know, there you go. Wouldn't do squat. I know they were talking about, let me look out in the chat. They were talking a lot about this stuff in the chat. Let's see. Yeah, Energetic Sloth says the criminal goes free and the law-abiding firearms owner gets the legal shaft. Yep, I have no doubt that that's what happens.
Did you see the interview with the guy who owned the orchard, the vineyard in Australia? Rich guy, landowner, out in the country, and he's allowed to keep guns because he's wealthy and he can pay for the permit for them. And he said, I've got money, I've got all this wealth, I own a business, I deserve these. The average person, no, they don't deserve these. It goes right back to the whole LeBron James thing. I think there's plenty of people in Australia that are wealthy that want to be part of the privilege, and this guy is not an anomaly. Now, I've never done a follow-up to see if they ever interviewed any other people who own large tracts of land or big business or whatnot, and you know how the media kind of does stuff, edits it, does it in a biased way, but it was enough to irritate me. I mean, I don't live there, never will, but I could see there being something like that. If they tried to implement it here, it wouldn't work, but if they tried it, the rich would still have their armed security or have their vault in their barn at their vineyard where they keep their guns that they never turned in.
Well, and you, I'm sure you all are familiar with my theory that that's exactly what it's for anyway, so that us poor plebes will be disarmed while the elites continue to be armed, and you know, we'll go back to the Middle Ages except with guns. Let's see. Energetic Sloth says the NFA made bugger all difference. People moved to knives and other weapons instead, or even fire. Yep, I have no doubt. You know, killers are going to kill regardless. They're just going to find a different way to do it. Vandalistica says statistics show that gun deaths were already on the decline prior to the NFA. Exactly. It had no measurable effect, and that's what the study shows. You know, so, you know, bottom line is, wouldn't do squat, particularly here. Moving on, there is at least one school district in Illinois that gets it. By Katie Riley from October 1st, 2018 in Time Magazine. I have to be able to protect my kids, quote unquote. The superintendent became a cop so she could carry a gun at school. For the first time in 20 years as an educator, Julie Kramer carried a gun to school last week. It marked the culmination of 9 months of police academy training for the Hudsonville, Illinois superintendent, who became a law enforcement officer so she could carry a concealed weapon at school and respond to an active shooter if necessary, something she says was not even on my radar a decade ago. If somebody comes in to try to hurt my kids, we have something other than a stapler to throw at them. We're no longer a soft target. We have some options, says Kramer, who graduated from the police training program on September 22nd. I'm just going to be a superintendent that happens to also be a police officer. Kramer's law enforcement training is one example of the lengths to which educators are now going to try to boost school security and keep students safe as school shootings continue to occur with alarming frequency. She began her training in January before 17 people were killed in a shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School or 10 in a shooting at Santa Fe High School in Texas. But Kramer had often worried that her rural district, which serves about 320 students, all on the same campus, would be a soft target because there aren't many first responders in close proximity. Without the budget to hire a full-time school resource officer, Kramer decided to pursue the training shortly after a student in nearby Mattoon, Illinois, brought a gun to his high school, pulled it out in a crowded cafeteria, and shot one student before a teacher disarmed him. I think sometimes we sit back and think it'll never happen here. It'll never happen to us. It's states away, says Kramer, 51. But that was really close to home. Schools across the country have implemented a variety of new safety measures this year in response to the threat of school shootings, installing metal detectors, hiring more school resource officers, and, most controversially, arming some teachers. President Donald Trump has voiced support for arming teachers, but such measures have been met with criticism from gun control advocates who argue that an educator with a gun might inadvertently do more harm and might not be prepared to effectively respond to an active shooter anyway. The school resource officer on duty during the Parkland shooting, for example, has faced heavy criticism for failing to enter the building where gunshots rang out. As a newly sworn law enforcement officer, Kramer, who already had a concealed carry license and the physical endurance of a CrossFit athlete, can now carry a gun on school grounds without violating state law. Last week, she began carrying a concealed semi-automatic handgun every day and hopes that in an active shooter situation, she might be able to cut the response time to a few minutes, even if that means confronting a shooter who is a current or former student. I love all my kids, but if it comes to a situation where I'm walking down the hall and one of them is taking the lives of some of my other kids, then no, I won't hesitate because of that. She says. Kramer graduated after 9 months of learning everything a full-time police officer learns, making traffic stops and arrests, using pepper spray and tasers, practicing hand-to-hand combat, and completing a 40-hour shooting course. She says she doesn't agree with policies that would allow educators to carry weapons just because they have a concealed carry license or a military background. The lengthy police training was essential, she says. Chuck Doan, director of the Southern Illinois Criminal Justice Training Program, says that in more than 20 years, he has never had another educator pursue police training for school safety. It is definitely not that common, he says. Although I think it's kind of a sad state of affairs, it's important that we have people in our schools who can make a police response when necessary, whether that's in the form of a police officer assigned by the department or someone like Julie. The National Association of School Resource Officers does not track how common it is for school administrators to become law enforcement officers, but Kramer isn't alone. Steve Webb, the superintendent in Goreville, Illinois, became a law enforcement officer in 2010 when he could not hire a full-time school resource officer. He now runs active shooter response trainings in his district and others. Kramer says that she has never encountered a shooting or other violent incident in her district, but she feels more comfortable entering school now, confident that she could respond if necessary. I have to be able to protect my kids. If you work in education, I don't care whether you're a secretary, a bus driver, a superintendent, a teacher, or a principal, they're your kids. I have 324 kids that come in every day that are my kids, and it matters what happens, Kramer says. I hope this place goes another 20, 40, 60 years without it ever happening, but it pays to be prepared. Well, I agree with where her heart is, that she wants to do everything that she can to protect those kids. I absolutely understand that. I agree with it. I appreciate it. But I don't think you should have to go through 9 months of training to do it. I just don't.
I think if you need 9 months of training, then maybe you're right. If you want 9 months of training because, you like training, that's fine. But
that's a completely different story.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think getting the training is the prudent thing to do. Absolutely. I think that getting as much training as you can afford in both time and money is the prudent thing to do. But I don't think that it should be required. Neither
do I. I'm wondering if she's never handled a gun before the training.
Well,
she already had a concealed carry license, the article said, before she went through the police academy.
Okay, maybe she got the concealed carry license, but maybe she had the bare minimum experience with a handgun. And I don't know. Just for her to make a statement, especially like, oh, military training don't count? Oh, really? Whatever.
I could see the argument for wanting a teacher or a school resource officer or whatever. I guess it would be more along the lines of just the teacher needing training and being required to take training because they're going into a public school. And just because we think it's cool doesn't mean everybody else does. And, with it being a public school, I could see where they could demand that whoever's going to carry has to go through a certain amount of training. 9 months is way too much. But
it's not about we think it's cool and they don't. It's if you've already met the state requirements for concealed carry, What's the difference between engaging a threat in a school as an employee of that school and engaging a threat in Walmart or the bank or McDonald's or in the parking lot?
Lawyers. That's it.
Then really it's not about training. It's about the school having adequate insurance.
That's exactly my point. That's why I don't think it's a problem for the school to require training before they let somebody carry a gun into a school. A teacher carry a gun into a school, because the school's going to get sued.
You're saying they have the training along with the lawyers in order to handle the law, to minimize the lawsuit by saying, look, we sent them to training.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, but not you using your gun to protect your family or innocent bystanders in Walmart is not the same as using your gun to protect students in the school hallway.
Well, no, I think it's the same. If you're protecting somebody's life, it doesn't matter where you're at. I'm just talking about the legal aspect. If I'm a school administrator, before I let somebody carry a gun into my school that I'm going to be liable for, I want to make sure that I've got all my T's crossed and my I's dotted. And that means, I'm going to make you take training and get certified. You don't go and you work at a factory right now. Your boss isn't going to let me walk in there and jump on a forklift.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, but I mean that's because of a state law, not.
Well, what do you think is going to happen in a public school?
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong. I was going to say that your explanation of why a teacher would need training has been the only rational one I've heard up to now. I've heard a whole lot of, they don't know what they're doing, or shooting back at Walmart's not the same as shooting back in the school cafeteria, or other BS arguments like that. But from the legal standpoint of CYA in court, by having more than just a lawyer on retainer and insurance, but also documentation. They love a paper trail, right?
Yeah.
David, your explanation has been better, more logical than some of the other ones I've heard.
I should have thought of that one myself, actually. I deal with that where I work. My agency requires us to go through a lot of yearly training. We have to do 40 hours a week 40 hours a year of in-service training every year. 12 of which is our use of force and verbal de-escalation and unarmed self-defense and physical restraint training. For that very reason, we also have to be first aid and CPR and suicide prevention and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And as a matter of fact, I'm the guy that keeps track of all the training records for my facility. So, I'm very familiar with the concept that David brought up that, governmental agencies want their people to have documented training so that if and when an incident occurs and the inevitable lawsuit happens, they can defend themselves in court by saying, this is the training that this individual had. And then, they either followed it or they didn't. So, that makes absolutely perfect sense. And I am completely surprised that I did not think of that my damn self.
I had to redeem myself from earlier. I flipped out a little earlier, so. Sorry about that, y'all.
Oh, no, that's all right. I'm going to go ahead and skip that one, and we will go right to Roll Call's favorite part of the show, self-defense shout-outs. For those of you who are new to the show or who have never stuck around to the end, self-defense shout-outs is a segment where I do exactly that. I give a shout-out to someone who has engaged in self-defense. I am not celebrating the death or injury of the criminal. I am, in fact, celebrating the continued life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of the good guy, and celebrating that they had the means, method, and opportunity to defend themselves. So with that in mind, this is from WTVD from Saturday, September 30th, 2018. Cameron woman admits to shooting husband during domestic incident, deputies say. This is from Cameron, North Carolina. A Cameron woman says she shot her husband after he allegedly forced his way into her home with a handgun and assaulted her and a juvenile female, according to the Harnett County Sheriff's Office. Jeffrey Hooks, 60, has been charged with breaking and entering to terrorize and 2 counts of assault on a female and assault by pointing a gun. Deputies responded to the 160 block of Ramona Collins Court in Cameron at 2:30 a.m. on Saturday. It was there that Gina Crawford told investigators she shot Hooks. Deputies said it is alleged that the two do not live together. Hooks was transported to Cape Fear Valley Hospital with gunshot wounds and remains in serious condition. The incident remains under investigation. So good for you, ma'am. I am very glad to hear that you and what I can only assume would be your daughter are alive and in good health. You know, from what I understand, it's an estranged couple, and he, for some reason, went to the house. I don't know if there was a restraining order in place, but if there was, well, you know, paper did a lot of good. So she did what she had to do. He attacked them and assaulted them, and she did what she had to do to defend herself and her daughter. Good on her. The next one, suspected burglar is fatally shot by Albuquerque homeowner. From October 4th, 2018. This is from U.S. News and World Report. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Police in Albuquerque say a homeowner has fatally shot a suspected burglar who was breaking into his Foothills home. Officers were called to the house on reports of a shooting at about 5 a.m. Thursday. When police arrived, they reported finding a man dead in the driveway of a townhouse. A man and woman who live in the home told police that an alarm alerted them to a break-in. The man fired at least one shot at the intruder. Police have not identified the dead man and haven't released the names of the homeowners. They say the case will be turned over to the district attorney's office to see if anyone should be charged. Sounds like a good shoot to me. So there we have it. Despite what the liberals would have you think, it actually does happen. The good guy with a gun is not a myth. And with that, we're going to go ahead and roll up the sidewalks and lock the doors. Before we do that, though, I'd like to thank everybody for coming around. Dave, anything that you have to say? Any words of wisdom, parting shots, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Always a good conversation. And make sure that you check out the rest of the Budget's channel. If I could recommend a video, go watch his interview with the concealed pocket carry. Really, really interesting stuff. I think you'll like it. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, sir, and thanks for plugging me. Awesome. Roll call. Anything that you want to leave us with, sir?
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. The last part is my favorite part of the whole show. You can check me out on Facebook, Instagram, guntube.org, gunstreamer.com. I put up some new videos the last couple of days, so go check those out on the tubes, the U of tubes. And thanks for having me again, Budget. Really do appreciate it.
No problem, man. Thanks for being here. Squib, anything you'd like to leave us with, sir?
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Everybody have a good weekend, and check out Caliber Corner tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, the real time zone, on the Travis P11 channel. We're going to be talking about lever action rifles, and also check out Lock and Load on the Hawaii Volcano Squad channel at 11 p.m. Eastern on Monday nights. And I think Rick is not doing Rick's Life as I See It on Saturday because he is traveling to Indiana.
Yeah, I don't believe he is.
What?
I don't believe he is doing it.
No, he's not doing a show, but he is traveling to Indiana.
Yeah.
Okay. Be like, well, I didn't check the bulletin board. Wait, what?
No, he's not doing the show, but he is traveling.
Yes, he is moving to Indiana. He is not staying in Rhode Island. And let's see, I don't know. Yes. There's other people. Sunday's packed with shows. So, and then you said you might do a show tomorrow?
Maybe, depending upon how things go with the Kavanaugh stuff. I might not. It's just going to depend on if the urge strikes me and I actually have some time. So we'll see. I'm trying to get out tomorrow and do some produced content if the weather and the circumstances permit. So I've got a couple of gun reviews I want to do. Also, since since Kingpin mentioned them, I recently got a package from CCW Breakaways and am currently testing and evaluating their concealed carry pants and that system. So in the semi-near future, there will be a video or two on that subject coming out. So keep an eye out for that. So far, at first glance, I'm pretty impressed. I rather like their stuff. Midnight Range says everybody with these damn shows are infringing on his Sundays. Hey, no one's putting a gun to your head and making you watch, are they? Except my show. You better watch mine if you know what's good for you. Anyway.
Lots of corking going on all over the place, man.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, the way I see it is that if people want to watch me, they'll watch me. If they want to watch somebody else, they'll watch somebody else. And, hey, I don't care. I think it's awesome. I think it's great that people decide that they want to spend some time with me. But if they want to spend time with someone else, go right ahead. I'm not going to be offended.
Sounds like some sort of open relationship.
Oh, no, I'm not going there. However, next week, there will not be the right of the people. On Friday next week, this time next week, I will probably be exhausted and ready to die from being at the Pathfinder School in Jackson, Ohio. I'll be taking, for those that don't know, that is the survival school run by Dave Canterbury from Dual Survival. I'll be taking their basic survival class there, and it's a rough one. It's not a walk in the park for sure. So I'll be doing that all weekend next week. If I have reception, and if I have battery, and if I have the energy, I might go live for a little bit from the campfire on my phone. Maybe, but don't hold your breath. So there will not be a right of the people next week. That being said, as always, you can catch me anywhere there's a social media platform. I have a presence here on YouTube, on gun channels, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, GunTube, HugeTube, Gunstreamer, everywhere and anywhere that I can get my dirty little fingers into the pie, I will. So you can catch me there. And as always, I want to thank everybody for coming by and being part of the conversation. I am always surprised and humbled that you guys want to spend some time with me. So thank you very much. As always, let your Congress critters and elected representatives know what you think, particularly if you want them to confirm Kavanaugh. Let them know. Contact them today. Call their office tonight. Leave the voicemail. Let them know. Carrier pigeon smoke signal, heliograph, semaphore, do whatever you got to do. Let them know. And never, ever, ever give up the fight. I'll see you next time.